Good afternoon, and welcome to the 22nd Annual Justice J.B. Shaughnessy mock trial. Welcome to our guests and everyone in attendance. We just request that if you are in attendance, obviously if you can put your phones on silent for the time being. There'll be two mock trials today, both on the same trial, R.V. Sillip. The first group will present, and then the next group will present their mock trial. So, without further ado, we may begin. Order in the court. All rise, please. Court is now in session. Please be seated. At this time, we'll move to the introductions. We'll introduce our judges, and then we will hop into the arraignment, plea, and then we'll move to the opening statements.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sonia Tarailage. I've been practicing law for almost 30 years in the Toronto area, and I graduated from Osgoode Hall Law School and then went to a downtown firm and stayed there for a few years and then joined Emilio Bichellia's firm, where I've been for the better part of my career. Batista and I practice civil litigation, so we are courtroom lawyers, as it were, in all different types of cases, mostly dealing with commercial list matters and construction litigation, that type of thing. So good luck to everybody. Just have fun with it. Enjoy.
Good afternoon. Batista Frino. I work with Sonia Tarailage. I did go to Osgoode as well for law school. My path was a little different. I kind of stumbled into litigation, so it's good if you know now that's what you want to do. It strengthens you for the life to come. But I practiced for a while. I left law for a little bit to raise my family. My child is here today. I will not play favorites. But and then I've since then I have been practicing civil litigation. Good luck, everyone. We're looking forward to helping you.
Hi everyone, I'm Gina Rhodes. I work at Miller Thompson downtown in Toronto, doing mostly restructuring and insolvency law. I went to law school at the University of Miami School of Law, actually, a dual citizen, so I went down there. I moved up here about 5.5, 6 years ago. Down there I was doing mostly civil litigation, a little bit of restructuring, and up here now I'm doing more restructuring and a little civil litigation. That's me. Good luck, everyone.
I will now read the arraignment and plea. Joe Sillip, if you will stand, please. Joe Sillip stands charged that they, between September 2023 and May 2024, in the city of Mariposa, did commit criminal harassment against Amaru Ore, contrary to Section 264 of the Criminal Code of Canada. Joe Sillip, how do you plead to this charge? Guilty or not guilty? Thank you. Please be seated. We'll now move to the opening statements.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. I'm Robert. To my right are both my Crown witnesses, Amaru and Ngotzi, who will testify before you all. Today, the judge will hear the story of how Mr. Sillip, the accused, repeatedly targeted and harassed the complainant over a period of several months. This case isn't about a simple misunderstanding or a one-time mishap, but rather about a pattern of behavior, unwanted, intimidating, and frightening behavior, which left the complainant to fear for their safety and of their peace of mind. The evidence we will present before you today will show that the accused made numerous unwanted comments on the complainant's social media page, followed the complainant around campus, and even continued to engage with the complainant after having clearly acknowledged the complainant's request to stop. You will hear testimony from the complainant as well as from other witnesses who have been impacted from this unwanted behavior and how it has affected them in their daily life. As stated in Section 264 of the Criminal Code of Canada, subsection 2A clearly states that repeatedly following from place to place the other person or anyone known to them is defined as harassment. Additionally, subsection 2B of Section 264 of the Criminal Code of Canada states repeatedly communicating with either directly or indirectly the other person or anyone known to them is defined as harassment. After presenting numerous pieces of key evidence against Mr. Salip, I'm positive that Your Honor will find that he goes against at least 3 of the 4 subsections found in Section 264 of the Criminal Code. I ask that you listen carefully to the evidence presented and hold the accused accountable for the harm they have caused. I'd now like to call Ms. Amaru Orr to the stand. Ms. Orr, how would you describe your relationship with Joe at the beginning?
So around 1 year ago, I started hanging around Joe. I met him at university. I consider Joe to be one of my friends, but his behavior always seemed a bit intense to me.
Did you decide to stop spending time with Joe after a few months of knowing him?
Yeah, I didn't like hanging around Joe. It took up a lot of my time. Therefore, I told Joe to find new friends.
Did you clearly communicate that decision to Joe?
Yes, I communicated to Joe that he should find new friends.
So after you told Joe to find new friends, what happened?
After this, he switched his major from computer science to marketing, which is my major, and he ended up in my class block.
Did you want to spend time with Joe again after he switched into your major?
No, I didn't, but since he joined my class block, we ended up being in the same social group again, and this meant that we ended up spending a lot of time together. I didn't want to be around Joe so much, but Joe kept pressuring me to hang out. I had to eventually tell Joe to find new friends for the second time. This is when I really started to feel uncomfortable around Joe.
What specifically did Joe do that made you feel uncomfortable?
Joe kept walking me home from school, and he always waited outside of my house every morning.
And how often did Joe try to contact you?
Joe kept calling me nonstop, which made me feel uncomfortable, and this made me go to my professor to see if I could switch into a new class block or if Joe can switch into a new class block.
And how many times did you tell him to leave you alone?
I don't know the exact number of times, but I asked Joe to leave me alone on numerous occasions.
And how did Joe respond to these requests?
Joe ignored them completely and kept on trying to contact me.
Did you ask the university or any professors for help?
Yes, as I already mentioned, I asked my professor to switch me into a different class, and this request was not fulfilled, and my professor told me that they don't care about my personal problems, and I quote.
Can you describe to me what happened on May 12th?
Yeah, so on May 12th, I had the launch of a big marketing campaign. I was contracted to do a live video, and I was going to do it in a field where I film all my other content at. Joe knew that I filmed here a lot, and has bothered me there in the past.
Can you describe what Joe did during your live stream?
Yeah, as I started to live stream, Joe started to blast music, and he started to scream words that are banned from social media. This led to me losing out on my brand deal and made me think that I had to do something to stop Joe's behavior.
Would you say that Joe was one of the main reasons why you lost out on your brand deal?
Yes, in my opinion, Joel is the sole reason why I lost my brand deal. This affected my main source of income gravely.
And what would you want the court to understand about what you went through?
I would want the court to understand that even after having to ask Joe to leave me alone, he ignored these requests and also caused me to lose out on a major business opportunity that would have been a very beneficial source of income for a college student like myself. Aside from this, affecting multiple business opportunities, Joe's behavior also had a major impact on my mental well-being.
Thank you, Amaro. Your Honor, no more questions.
Amaru, you and Joe became friends around May 2023, correct?
Correct.
You were friends for about 4 months after that, correct?
Correct.
And you decided to stop being friends with Joe because they didn't fit in with your online brand. Is that accurate?
That's part of the reason, but another part of the reason is because he was, his behavior was intense to me, and I didn't feel comfortable around him.
Okay. About a month later, you started seeing Joe more often because he switched into your major, right?
Correct.
They would walk you to school, bring you gifts and coffee, things like that?
Correct.
But you accepted all their gifts and walked with them to school, didn't you?
True.
But you still went behind their back to try and get him removed from your class, correct?
Correct.
After this, around the end of January 2024, you worked on a project together in that class, did you?
Yes.
Would you say this project went well?
I would say it went well, yeah.
That's true, because you posted the video you two made on your own social media account to your millions of followers, as you say. You're certain that you did not want to be around Joe at this time period, correct?
Correct.
Then how do you explain the birthday card that you sent to Joe on February 2nd, telling him you miss him and asking if he would like to get coffee with you?
I mean, the way that I can explain that is I felt uncomfortable around Joe, and I didn't want to seem like I was drifting away from him, but I just wanted to keep in touch with him.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Counsel, before you do that, do you intend to put this birthday card into
Yes,
the evidence?
I'm just going to confirm that.
Go ahead.
Can you confirm that this is the birthday card you sent?
I can confirm, yes.
Defense counsel would like to submit this exhibit as evidence.
So entered.
Thank you. That'll be marked as exhibit number 1.
I'll now move on to a new line of questioning. Amaru, do you like coffee?
Yes.
That's interesting, because in your witness statement, you explicitly mention, I don't even like coffee. So which one is it?
I guess it's no then.
Okay, thank you. You say that you don't like coffee, yet one of your social media posts depicts you with coffee, saying that you are enjoying it. Is that correct?
Correct.
Can you admit this seems slightly disingenuous?
Yes, I can.
The comments made by Joe on this post are accusing you of lying about liking coffee, correct?
Correct.
Your Honor, I would like to submit this social media post with comments from Joe as an exhibit.
Did you show the witness?
Yes.
Thank you. That'll be exhibit number 2.
You've admitted that you don't like coffee, correct?
Yes.
So Joe's accusations are true, are they not?
Yeah, they are.
Thank you, Amaru. Thank you, Your Honors. I have no further questions.
I'd now like to call Ngozi, Amaru's friend, to the stand. Ngozi, can you tell the court a bit about yourself?
So I've been friends with Amaru for about going on 3 years now. I've known her since first year of university, and we've been living together ever since then. And I'm 21 years old now, so.
So you've lived with Amaru for a whole year, correct?
It's going on 3 years now since
Okay.
I've known her since, and we've been living together since first year of university, so.
Were you aware of Amaru's relationship with Joe?
To a certain extent, yeah. When I had first met Joe, I sort of distanced myself from him. I didn't really want to get to know him that much as a person. I didn't find him as a very interesting person to be around, so I distanced myself from their relationship for the most part.
And how did you feel about his presence around your home?
Well, after about a couple of months, Amaru, who had eventually told him to essentially get lost and stop hanging around and find some new friends. And he started appearing outside our house trying to walk Amaru to class. So it was a little odd, I would say.
Did you notice Joe doing anything else that was strange after Amaru ended their friendship?
Yeah, he started dropping off a lot of like strange packages and like gifts at the house, as well as he hired someone to like play guitar and sing outside of the house while I was trying to leave, and I had to tell them that I'm not Amaru, so I could essentially get away.
Is there anything else Joe Center brought to the house?
Not that I can recall explicitly. I mean, it was mainly just gifts and flowers and stuff like that. So,
How did Joe's reaction to Amaru ending their friendship affect your personal day-to-day life?
well, for starters, Joe started calling Amaru constantly, like at all hours of the day, and I was almost unable to reach her half the time via cell phone because he'd be constantly tying up the lines. And as well, I could even hear it through the walls constantly at our home, her phone buzzing at all hours of the night. So,
Was there anything else that was suspicious about the number of calls Amaru received?
well, it was very odd because he was calling literally at all hours of the night, essentially, no matter what, and it was just constant back to back, even despite her ignoring them or hanging up. So,
How did Joe's constant phone calls affect Amaru and others trying to contact her?
well, it was very impactful in terms of she wasn't really able to communicate with me and some of her other friends on a day-to-day basis via the phone. So, and then on top of that, it was just, it was very stressful, and it kind of was a little fearful, him having to constantly try to call her and contact her, even though she didn't want to be contacted. So,
How would you say Amaru reacted to Joe's constant presence?
she seemed like she was very uncomfortable for the most part, I'd say. So, she didn't want to be around him. So.
And did Amaru feel safe at home?
No, we actually had to start locking the windows, and she was urging me to close the curtains and stuff because we could see Joe's car being parked outside our home constantly, but he wasn't in it, and it was honestly fearful for me as well to leave the house. I didn't feel comfortable leaving the house knowing he might be stalking outside, waiting for either me or her specifically. So.
Can you tell me what happened when you and Amaru were trying to film in your usual campus spot?
So as we got to our usual campus spot, we saw Joe already waiting there for us, and right away, like as we started the live stream, he started blasting music and starting yelling at us, trying to distract us and ruin the shots and the live stream and the photos we were taking, and it ended up ruining the brand deal Amaru had had. So
In what ways did Joe interfere with Amaru's work and online presence?
well, for starters, she had told me about the social media comments he had been making that were really ruining her brand image, and then on top of that, he had constantly been interfering when we'd be trying to film in the park. So.
Okay. Did you notice any changes in Amaru's mental state or her motivation during this time?
Yeah, Amaru had seemed like very just fearful and kind of anxious while at home, constantly checking to make sure the windows are locked or that the curtains are closed, worrying that Joe is either watching us or waiting outside. On top of that, with all the phone calls, and it was also very demotivating because she had worked very hard to keep her brand up, and it had started losing a lot of followers, and her source of income had been tanking quite significantly.
So how did this affect Amaru's career as an influencer?
It affected it very heavily.
Do you believe Joe's actions were intentional?
Yes, absolutely.
From your point of view, why did Amaru eventually decide to go to the police?
It just became too much to handle. Like after the significant brand deal that Amaru had lost, she had lost out on a huge chunk of income, and it had just been too much to deal with at home, constantly living in essentially a state of fear or anxiety, worrying that someone's either watching or waiting for you outside your own home. So,
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no more questions.
Ngozi, you and Amaru live together and are good friends, correct?
yes,
You claim to have been afraid of Joe breaking into your residence because you saw his car close to your house at night, correct?
yes, that is correct.
But you never actually saw Joe at night, did you?
Well, no,
Okay. Your residence is relatively close to the University of Mariposa campus, considering Joe and Amaru would walk from there, isn't it?
I suppose that is correct, yes.
So wouldn't it be fair to assume Joe just parks there because it is close to his school?
I suppose you could say that, yes, that is correct.
In your witness statement, you mentioned that you never really got to know Joe because they seemed, quote, boring and not interested in anything that we like to do. Didn't you say that?
Yes, that is correct.
Doesn't that mean you would have a pretty heavy bias against Joe and in favor of Amaru, considering you were good friends with her?
Objection sustained. It calls for a speculation and opinion. Move on, counsel.
I have no more questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd now like to call up Joe Silip to the stand.
Good afternoon, honorable justices. My name is Giacomo Ementea, and I represent Joe Silip. My client is accused of criminal harassment contrary to Section 264 of the Criminal Code. The burden is on the Crown to prove, beyond reasonable doubt, Joe Silip knowingly and intentionally caused Amaru Orr to fear for their safety or the safety of those they knew. Subsection 1 of Section 264 requires the accused to be aware that the other person is being harassed and for the person to fear for their safety or the safety of someone they know. The evidence shows that these requirements have not been fulfilled. Amaru could not have reasonably feared for their safety or the safety of anyone they knew due to Joe's actions. Joe never threatened Amaru or anyone they knew. Joe only ever offered tokens of friendship to Amaru, such as gifts, coffee, or offering to walk them to school. None of these things would make a person reasonably fear for their safety. The only harm Joe may have caused Amaru was to her business through social media comments and an incident in a park on May 12th. These social media comments, although distasteful, were never threatening in any way. In fact, they came from someone who felt betrayed and wished to expose what they believed to be fraudulent behavior. As Joe testified in their witness statement, they felt used after Amaru appeared to want to be friends once more, but then suddenly became distant again. Amaru credits Joe's interruption of her business campaign on May 12th as the sole reason they went to the police. However, this campaign took place in a public space that is frequented by students at the University of Mariposa often. Joe was at this public space first, simply trying to enjoy music, when Amaru and her friend Ngozi started shouting at him, trying to force him to leave. Secondly, Joe could not have known that Amaru felt harassed by him. She was constantly sending him mixed signals about their friendship. First, they became friends around May of 2023, but after 4 months, Amaru decided she didn't want to be around him anymore because he negatively affected her online brand. Joe only started seeing Amaru again naturally because he had switched to the same major as her. This switch was not for the purpose of seeing Amaru, but because Joe had a genuine interest in the marketing program. This can be proved by the University of Mariposa transfer request from Joe, showing that he had already completed three credits required for this major, demonstrating a clear prior interest in the subject. Furthermore, Professor Micah Carmine testified in her witness statement, and will testify once more today, that Joe was a dedicated student and improved dramatically in the course. These don't seem like the actions of a person knowingly harassing another person, but of someone attempting to further their academic career. Being around Amaru Moore was simply consequential, and once more, Amaru failed to express to Joe that she felt harassed by him. First, they worked on a video together for school, which Amaru posted to her social media. And second, Amaru sent Joe a friendly birthday card expressing interest to see him. These don't seem like the actions of a person who fears for their safety or wishes to be left alone by another individual. In the end, the evidence will show that the prosecution has failed to meet their burden, and my client is not guilty. Thank you. I will now call Joe Sillip to the stand. What is your name for the court?
Joe Sillip,
How old are you?
22 years old.
And where do you go to school?
I go to school at the University of Mariposa for marketing.
How did you meet Amaru Ore?
We met at around May 2023 because we both go to the University of Mariposa, and we both hung out with the same friend groups of people. When we initially met, I thought we would be good friends, and we were good friends, until about 4 months later when she told me that she didn't want to be friends anymore, which confused me.
Why did she tell you that?
The reasons for not wanting to see me anymore was because she received a comment that I was that didn't want to see me on her Instagram, so I was negatively affecting her brand, and their community on social media didn't even like me. So Amaru went even as far as to accuse me as trying to become famous by being her friend.
When did you start seeing Amaru again after that?
I didn't see Amaru for about a month after this, until I switched into the same major as her. And we naturally started to see each other more. At this point, I thought we were becoming friends again until I learned she tried to get our professor to move me to a different class.
Why did you switch to the marketing major in the first place?
I switched to the marketing major because I had a genuine interest in the subject matter, and I felt that it was better suited where I wanted to go with my career. In fact, I'd already started taking some marketing classes so that I can be a part of the switch and that it could be a lot easier for me to transition. At this point, I've always been interested in marketing, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to commit to it, so I tried computer science, and it just wasn't my forte. And it was nice seeing Amaru as a result of the switch, but it just came naturally because I enjoyed the subject.
Your Honors, may I approach the witness, please?
Yes, counsel.
Can you confirm this is the transfer request?
Yes.
I'd like to submit the transfer request.
Thank you. Administrative records transfer will be marked as exhibit number 3.
Did you start seeing Amaru less as a result of her asking for you to be removed to a different class?
No, but not by choice. Our professor paired us up for a project that we had to create a video together. We worked extremely well and efficiently together, and the video turned out good. Amaru even posted the video onto her social media. It was after this I once thought, again, that we could be friends due to the mixed messages. Amaru started being extremely nice to me, and she even sent me a birthday card asking to see me. However, once again, seemingly for no reason, she didn't want to be friends, and I couldn't understand why.
Why did you leave comments on Amaru's social media posts?
The only reason I did this was to show her social media how much of a fraud she is. I had to come to the realization that Amaru was very disingenuous and doesn't tell you how she truly feels. I felt betrayed by her, and I wanted to show everyone else what type of person she is on her social media so they wouldn't get fooled.
What happened on May 12th at the park?
That park was one of my favorite places on campus, so I went there to enjoy some music in the outdoors. Then I noticed Amaru and Ngozi walking over before they started shouting at me to leave. I was simply trying to mind my own business and enjoy my music, and now I've been dragged into this.
Thank you, Your Honors. I have no further questions.
Joe, would you agree that Amaru told you to stop contacting them?
Yes.
In fact, they told you this more than once, correct?
Well, she told me to not be friends with her, so I'm not sure if it's not contact or she didn't say not to be friends, but she said to find new friends. So, still, that's not very that clear.
couldn't one make an assumption that she wouldn't want to have a relationship with you anymore after saying something like that?
One could make that assumption, but couldn't one also make the assumption that she just feels bad for me that I don't have a lot of other friends?
If she did, then why would she tell you to find other friends if you guys were already friends?
Because she felt bad for me not having a lot of other friends. And being a social person doesn't just involve one friend. It involves networking and other people.
You were also aware that Amaru asked their professor to move you to a different class, correct?
Yeah, and I'm not sure why.
And when you found out about that, you were hurt. You even said you were, quote, devastated, correct?
Correct. I liked her friendship.
Despite all this, you still continue to try to spend time with Amaru.
As one does, they try to recoup a friendship because she was sending me mixed signals. I wasn't sure if she was just being a dramatic teen or late teen.
Did you or did you also not say in your witness statement that you, quote, wanted to show Amaru how real your friendship could be by transferring into her class?
Yeah, I wanted to show her that after I transferred into this class. It wasn't I transferred into this class for her, but we are in the same major and I wanted to have a peaceful start. So yes, I agree that we could have a better friendship involving school, completely platonic.
And you said that you walked Amaru to and from class. How often did you do that?
Almost every class, it was routine. We were friends. I didn't think anything weird. She didn't tell me not to, so I was concerned. Or not concerned, I was confused.
Did you ever wait outside their house in the morning?
Yes, because that was routine. She never told me not to, so I kept doing it. She never showed any concern, so if there was no concern shown, then how would I know she didn't want me to?
Would you agree that continuing to show up every morning, even after being told to find new friends, could be viewed as unwanted?
Or it could just be viewed as being a good friend, so no, I don't see it that way. I see it as me being a good friend and putting effort into a friendship. What's wrong with that?
Your Honor, I'd like to submit pieces of evidence.
Have you shown this to the witness? Can you show this to the witness?
Are these the social media comments you made on her post?
Yes.
Let's talk about the comments you made on her post.
Counsel, just a moment. Social media posts posted from April 20th to April 30th, exhibit number 4. And social media posts from February 15th to March 10th, 2024 shall be exhibit number 5.
You said I had to, quote, I had to let Amaru's followers know the truth. What did you mean by this statement?
That Amaru has two personalities, her normal personality and her social media personality. Amaru is fooling her social media followers to believe something that she's not, to believe she is a very sweet and genuine person when that's just not the truth. She plays a character who she's not, and I believe that the people should know who she is, which is fair. If I'm watching someone every day, I'd want to know if they're actually a bad person, because who wants to support someone who's bad? Like, people don't want to support Elon Musk because of the things he's doing. Why would you actively choose to support someone who is fake, who is a fake character? Would you support someone who's a fake character and who's misleading people?
Would you say the comments you made on her social media posts were positive, or were they critical and personal?
I'd say they were honest.
Would you say they were positive, or were they critical?
I wouldn't say it was positive to her, but I'd say it's positive for the rest of the people viewing her content, because, again, they should be informed what they were watching.
So to her, they'd be seen as negative comments, correct?
Depends how she interprets it. I'm not her. How would I know how she thinks?
Would you agree that your comments caused other people to react negatively towards Amaru?
I don't know how other people would have reacted. They are comments. Again, I don't know the psychology of other people.
Why don't we talk about the May 12th? Were you aware that Amaru had a live campaign video planned for that date?
I'm not sure. My memory's not so good. I was aware that she had the shoot, but again, not everyone can remember times, not everyone can remember dates. I wasn't even sure when she was doing, and the park is a regular spot that I stayed at.
So is it just a coincidence that you had speakers and played music at the exact same time and place as Amaru's video?
Completely. I've been at that park multiple times, and who doesn't like music?
Sorry, counsel?
That objection is overruled. Please proceed, counsel.
So you admit to playing loud music. Were
I
you,
wouldn't say it's loud music. Well, do you listen to music?
were you aware that using profanity or banned words could get a video flagged online?
I was just listening to music. Wasn't just one song. Well, music has profanity in it. How was I supposed to know that it's not allowed online? How was I supposed to know that she was even going to be there at the exact same time as me? I'm just listening to music. What's wrong with listening to music? It's not like I was harming anybody, or not intentionally at least.
Okay, to finish up, you also described yourself as, quote, wanting to be the perfect friend, but friends respect boundaries, don't they?
Depends where the boundaries set, because from what it seems like, Amaru has not been clear to me whatsoever. What Amaru thinks in her head has not been portrayed to me. So I wouldn't know if I'm breaking a boundary. I wouldn't know if I'm doing any of that. Me thinking I'm a good friend might be different than her perspective of a good friend. Like, I don't know what she likes as a good friend. I'm trying my best to be there for her and be a good friend. Wouldn't you do that for your friends?
Thank you, Your Honor. No more questions.
I will now call Mika Carmine to the stand. What is your name,
Mika Carmine.
and what is your occupancy?
I work as a professor in the marketing department at the University of Mariposa.
How long have you worked there?
I've worked at U of M for approximately 10 years now.
Are you experienced with situations like this one?
I've never had something go to court like this, but I have dealt with drama in the past.
What do you know about Joe Sillip?
I know he transferred into my class in October of 2023, and he was struggling a bit with the work, but I noticed how hardworking and dedicated he was. He started to improve heavily to the point that he was one of my favorite students in the class.
Why did you deny Amaru's request to switch Joe out of the class?
At first, it wouldn't be approved by administration, and you can't just get another person removed from a class. I also didn't notice any evidence of harassment from Joe towards Amaru, and I knew he was dedicated to my class and didn't deserve to be moved.
Why did you put Joe and Amaru on a project together after this request?
It was an attempt to smooth over any tension between the two, and I thought it worked well because their project was excellent. They seemed to get along during the process, so I was surprised when Amaru suddenly requested a transfer out of my class.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Professor Carmine, do you recall Amaru asking you to move Joe to a different class block?
Yes.
And you said this was due to a personal situation, correct?
Yes.
So Amaru made it clear to you that something was wrong between the two of them?
Yes.
And you chose not to move Joe in part because the class was full, but also because you didn't view it as a serious concern, correct?
Yes.
You said Joe was, quote, devastated after learning about Amaru's request, correct?
Yes.
Would you agree that that's a very strong emotional reaction to a class scheduling issue?
I suppose so. However, I would have needed his consent to be moved.
So after that moment, you said Joe became more invested in class. Would you say that investment seemed personally motivated?
Like I said, he was one of my best students, and he works really hard and comes to see me, especially during office hours.
And you assigned Amaru and Joe to work on a class project together shortly after, correct?
Yes,
And this was your attempt to smooth over tension, is that right?
correct.
Did Amaru, did you ask Amaru if they were comfortable being in a group with Joe prior to pairing them up?
No, I don't recall that.
So you weren't aware that Amaru had already expressed concern about Joe's presence?
She did express concern about Joe's presence when she came to me requesting that he be moved.
You mentioned that you didn't see any harassment in your classroom, right?
Correct.
So it's possible that this behavior occurred outside of your view?
Correct.
You were surprised when Amaru switched out of the marketing department, correct?
Yes,
Amaru had been doing pretty well in your class up until then, correct?
yes,
So there, from your point of view, there was no reason academically as to why she would drop out of that class, correct?
correct.
Doesn't that suggest that the decision may have been based on personal discomfort?
Supposedly.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no more questions.
We will give counsel 2 minutes to prepare their closing remarks.
The accusations against my client, Joe Sillip, of criminal harassment, contrary to Section 264 of the Canadian Criminal Code, hold no value, as can be seen by the evidence shown today. The burden is on the Crown, and they have failed to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Joe Sillip, contrary to subsection 1 of Section 264, knowingly harassed Amaru Ore, causing them to reasonably fear for their safety or the safety of those that they knew. The evidence shows that Joe is not guilty of this. Firstly, Joe's actions could not have reasonably caused Amaru to fear for their safety. Joe never threatened Amaru, only ever bringing them gifts and offering to walk them to class. Joe respected Amaru's request to leave them alone, but had no choice in seeing Amaru when Joe joined the same major. This decision to switch majors was one of genuine interest in the subject, as we saw through the transfer request that showed the credits Joe had already completed. We also heard witness testimonies from Joe and Professor Carmine, who confirmed Joe's genuine interest in marketing and that they excelled in the program. Professor Carmine even called Joe a hardworking and dedicated student, one of their favorites in the class. The reason Amaru said they went to the police is due to the effect Joe's social media comments and the incident on May 12th had on her business. As we saw from Joe's comments on one of Amaru's posts, He was simply calling Amaru out on the inconsistencies between their online personality and what they actually thought. Joe was a victim of this disingenuous behavior and was simply expressing his opinion online while in no way threatening the safety of Amaru. Joe's alleged disruption of Amaru's business on May 12th occurred in a public space that Joe had arrived at first, where once again he did not threaten the safety of Amaru or anyone Amaru knew. Secondly, Joe was not made aware that Amaru felt harassed by him. Amaru's inconsistent behavior sent mixed signals to Joe. As we saw during Amaru's cross-examination, they are known for being dishonest about things such as liking coffee. Amaru was also inconsistent by telling Joe that they didn't want to be friends, but then sending birthday cards, requesting to see him. This compilation of evidence proves Joe's innocence, and the defense requests a verdict of not guilty. Thank you.
Your Honor, over the course of this trial, you have heard clear and consistent evidence that points to one simple conclusion. The accused engage in multiple acts of harassment that cause the complainant to fear for their own safety. At this time, you have now heard from the complainant herself, who spoke about the stress, fear, and discomfort this harassment has caused them to feel. You have seen the comments left by Mr. Silip on the complainant's social media page. You have heard about the numerous unwanted visits. You have even heard about how even after being asked to stop, the accused continued their behavior, which was deliberate, harmful, and repeated. This isn't about a one-time mistake, nor is it about miscommunication. This is simply about a human being refusing to accept boundaries, respect boundaries, and the law. Mr. Silip's actions meet every element required to establish harassment under the Criminal Code, more specifically Section 264, subsections A, B, and C of the Criminal Code. The law is clear, and so is the evidence brought forth today. The Crown respectfully submits that you find the accused, Mr. Silip, guilty of criminal harassment. It's time for accountability and for justice to be upheld. Thank you.
Thank you.
This court will now recess for judge's deliberation. All rise. This court is now in recess. You may be seated. So for fairness of the competition, during the feedback and decision part, we'll just ask that the period 2 and second competition just step outside for this component, and the judges will return for their deliberation and feedback. Order in the court, please, and all rise. Court is now reconvened. Please be seated.
We've come to a unanimous decision, and we find the defendant not guilty of the charges under Section 264, Sub 1, on the basis that you have not proved beyond a reasonable doubt of the mens rea element of the offense.
Congratulations, Mr. Silver. You're free.
Great job, everybody.
Yeah, great job.
Great job. Do you want to go first?
Oh, okay, I can start. Guys, just all of you did a great job, and I'm not just saying that. None of us are saying that. So we just want you to understand that whatever we say following this is to sort of just help you as well. So because we want to help you on the next level when you're going to the provincials, right? I think it's provincials. But so generally, I think you all did well. Your pace was fairly good. I think that you also reacted well in circumstances. I feel like, Robert, I saw you a bit uncomfortable at times, and I think that your uncomfortableness was because you kind of lost control of the process. So when you have a cross-examination, not an easy thing to do. A lot of lawyers don't know how to do cross-examination properly. So when you're asking questions on cross-examination, you want to keep them to yes or no answers. Because once you gave control to Joe to say whatever they wanted to say, then I guess you lose control of the process, and then you don't know what the witness is going to say yet next. Because the intent is you do know what they're going to say because they have a script, but you want to keep him controlled. Just answer the questions, and when he's going too far, you may just stop that process, say, that's not the question I asked you this question. So I think that's one element that I think that would help you. Again, not an easy job. I think, you did well. You did really well. Giacomo, all of you guys did. I think, Giacomo, for you, I don't think I would have admitted that there was a crime that he was responsible for, but not this crime. So, because I think in your opening, you had indicated that, he could be guilty of injuring his business, but not this crime. I thought I heard you say something to that effect. No, I understand your reasoning. I'm not disputing it. It's just that I don't think, because sometimes if you'll lead to the question that if he can commit this crime or this wrong, maybe he can commit another wrong. So I would just phrase it a little differently, because you had your points and you set out what you thought, why he wasn't guilty. So I thought that was good. I just would be careful in that regard. Everyone, Carlo, I think you didn't look sad or scared enough. So I don't know how much we needed that to be the case. I don't know, but I don't know how. Maybe Mr. Tropea can help us with that. Is there a requirement to sort of act this to some level, or?
I think filling the role, like the position, is the component to it, and then selling.
Right, selling it. Right. Yeah.
So can I talk
Right,
about
yes, please, yeah.
Thomas's performances,
please do.
Joe?
Yes.
So it was an excellent performance. Having said that, if that was my client, I would be a little bit scared right now, because that would be a situation where you don't put your client on the stand. He did not, he was acquitted but for himself. So great performance in terms of you got into the character, you got into the role. But that's one of the reasons why generally criminal lawyers don't put their clients on the stand, because they typically don't help themselves. So the testimony of the professor, fantastic. That was very helpful in terms of the defense, right? But certainly the defendant didn't help his own case, so he was acquitted regardless, because the test is very high to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. But I commend all of you for getting into the performances of the witnesses, because they were fantastic, and it's not an easy job. But both counsel, fantastic opening statements, great closing statements, and just because the defense won doesn't mean that you didn't do your job. In some ways, you have the harder job, right? And the only thing that I would say to both lawyers is, and this is something that even after 30 years is a very hard thing to do in cross-examination, and appreciating that you have time constraints here, but in cross-examination, the key is your path, the roadmap. The witness doesn't. You break it down into small bite-sized pieces so that the witness does not know necessarily where you're going, and it's sort of you build on one agreement after another agreement after another agreement till you've sort of blocked them into a corner and they realize that they have no alternative but to agree. And it's not, it's an art. It's not how can I say, to flip the evidence and the truth on its head. You're testing the evidence, which is what the judicial system is all about. That's why we need both sides, and this is why it works. But if you break it up into bite-sized pieces, then you're taking even the judge through the path very slowly, and ensuring that you're also being very fair to the witness. But you get us to your conclusion by taking us there slowly and building it, because then ultimately when you deliver the punchline, so it's not unlike a comic, you've built it up, and when you deliver that punchline, it's like a bombshell. So cross-examination really, unfortunately, is one thing that you get good at by just doing it more and more. And I sort of tend to think of it like challenging my kids. So when I think that they're not telling the truth, I take it in bite-sized pieces and I sort of attack it from each level to get them to the ultimate what is the truth and what really happened. So, but great job. And standing up there, especially at your age, and doing what you did today, that is, I don't think I could have done it at your age. And so really, all of you put your, give yourselves a pat on the back, because that is tremendous to be able to stand in front of a microphone and do what you did today. And so if you have aspirations of being a lawyer, all I would say is just reach for the stars and keep going for it, because it is a really rewarding career. Yeah, I have no regrets, so.
I agree with them, so without repeating, I'll just point out a couple highlights. Robert, despite the issue with Joe on cross, you did a really good job of, even when he was monologuing, right? Just kind of ignoring it and moving on to the next question. That's really effective. So really good job with that. Good use of eye contact throughout with the witnesses, with us. You emphasize your voice at different points during your opening and your closing. That's really good and really effective. It kind of brings us back and makes us pay attention to what you're saying. So really good with that. Giacomo, you really strong performance on crosses. You didn't really let any of the witnesses disagree with what you're saying, and you really controlled the witnesses. That was good. You both of you spoke very clearly, generally for everybody, and this is something we all practice and haven't been practicing as long, and it's really hard just not speaking too quickly, right? When you're asking questions, when you're giving an opening, a closing, when you're answering questions, it's really good to just make sure you slow down, even though you know all the facts and what you want to say. We don't know them yet, so you're trying to just speak slower than you would with your friends, right? It's a little Mika, you did a good job of that, as the professor, or Alex, you did a good job of saying Mika as the professor. Doing that, you spoke slowly, you kind of spoke like a professor would, so that was really effective. The Crown witnesses, yeah, both very good. You gave him he made his life a little easier by just kind of accepting what he was asking, but to be fair, the questions were true, so you can't lie on the stand. It's fair. Joe, good job of kind of commanding the whole examination. It's hard when you're being accused of, this, this crime that you acted very intense, but I did find that it was effective in pushing the questions back and just kind of taking over to tell your side. So great job, everybody.
Excellent. Sorry, I just have one more comment. I apologize. Maybe, again, Mr. Tropea, you can help us on this, but particularly with Nagasi, that's a hard role because it's a lot of hearsay. So I don't know, just hearsay just being that you're saying what she told me, and so, or what I heard, and so you have to just be a little careful with that. So was there objections? Could they make objections on hearsay? I don't remember.
I suppose, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is kind of tough role to be.
Yeah.
Yes, the being the roommate, because he said, well, she told him numerous times to leave her alone. Well, did she tell you, or did she tell you, or did you hear it? That would be your role to sort of, you don't have to use it for, but I'm just saying that would be the only thing, was the only issue with hearsay.
I think that's the good point,
Yeah.
Decipher between what they know,
Right.
and
What,
what they hear is.
right, right, what he could have witnessed, what Nagasi witnessed as to the relationship between them was one thing, but what she told Nagasi wouldn't necessarily be allowed, and that was something you could challenge. So, that's it. Great job, guys.
Okay, court is adjourned for the day. Give yourselves a round of applause.
Good afternoon. In the next matter, we will hear the same case, R.V. Sillip. So, will we please have order in the court, and please all rise. Thank you. Court is now in session. Please be seated. As we already did our introductions, we'll skip right to the arraignment and plea. Joe Sillip, if you will, please. Joe Sillip stands charged that they, between September 2023 and May 2024, in the city of Mariposa, did commit criminal harassment against Amaru Ore, contrary to Section 264 of the Criminal Code of Canada. Joe Sillip, how do you plea to this charge? Guilty or not guilty? Thank you. Please be seated. The Crown can start with their opening statements.
Your Honor and members of the jury, Amaru Orr is a 20-year-old university student, a dreamer, a creator, and a self-made professional. They've built a life for themselves as a successful social media influencer, combining their marketing studies with a brand that promotes joy and confidence. They are someone with ambition, talent, and a future. But that future was slowly suffocated, not all at once, but step by step by Joe Sillip. This case is about criminal harassment, not just discomfort, not just awkwardness, harassment. The law tells us that harassment happens when someone repeatedly follows, contacts, or watches another person in a way that would make a reasonable person fear for their safety, and they do so even after being told to stop. And that is exactly what we have here. The evidence will show that Joe Sillip inserted themselves into every corner of Amaru's life after Amaru had asked for space, told them to move on, made it clear the relationship was over. But Joe didn't move on. Instead, they switched majors to be closer to Amaru, started waiting outside their house each morning, walking them to school and calling non-stop at all hours. Amaru asked them to stop. Joe didn't. You will hear from Amaru, who will bravely take the stand to describe how their personal boundaries, their education, and even their sense of safety at home began to erode under Joe's obsessive behavior. You'll hear how they were forced to close the curtains, silence their phone, and eventually switch out of their own major just to get away from all of this. You'll also hear from Ngozi Madu, Amaru's roommate and close friend who witnessed Joe's actions firsthand. Ngozi will describe how their home went from a place of peace to a place of constant tension. This is not a case of miscommunication. It is not a coincidence. This is a case of a person who was told to stop and chose not to, again and again and again. The law is clear. When someone engages in repeated, unwanted behavior that causes fear, that is criminal harassment. And Joe Sillip's behavior was not only repeated and unwanted, it was deliberate, escalating, and damaging. At the end of this trial, we will ask that you return the only just verdict, that Joe Sillip is guilty of criminal harassment against Amaru Orr. Thank you.
I'd like to call Amaru Orr to the stand. Clarify, I am the Crown. I am attacking Joe, and this is my co-counsel, Declan. Please state your name and age for the court.
My name is Amaru Ore, and I am 20 years old.
Where do you go to school?
I go to school at the University of Mariposa.
What do you do for work?
I was previously a marketing student, and now I'm a business student at the University of Mariposa, and I also work as a social media influencer.
Perfect. So how did you first meet Joe Sillip?
We met a year ago at the beginning of school and started spending time together.
How would you describe your relationship with Joe at the beginning?
Well, at first we were friends, but Joe was very intense. The more I got to know Joe, the more I became uncomfortable with the friendship that we were building.
How did you deal with this uncomfortable situation?
I told them explicitly that I needed space and that they should go find new friends.
Your Honor, I would admit the administrative records from U of M for the transfer of Amaru Ore. Amaru, this is your transfer record.
Yes.
Disabled student is also Joe Slip's transfer record.
Thank you, counsel. We'll mark this as Exhibit 1.
What happened after you told Joe to find other friends?
A month later, in October specifically, Joe switched their major to marketing, which was my major, and started pushing to started taking the same classes as me. They kept pushing to spend time together again.
How often would you see Joe on campus now?
Once Joe was in my major, they were effectively inserted into every aspect of my daily life and academic life.
Did Joe ever follow you outside of school?
Yes, they would wait outside my house in the morning and walk me to school, even when I have explicitly told them to stop, and they will also wait for me after class.
Did Joe communicate with you outside of in-person interactions?
Constantly, they called me all the time, to the point that even I had to keep my phone on silent just to avoid the calls.
Wow. Did Joe's behavior affect your daily life?
Yes.
Can you please be specific as to how?
I started feeling paranoid because my phone was on silent. I also missed several important calls. On top of that, it also affected my sleep schedule due to the constant ringing throughout the night.
Are there any other examples, primarily?
Several of the statements made by the plaintiff in regards to feeling paranoia and keeping his phone silent are not actually in their witness statement, but in their roommate notes. Therefore, we would like to object to these comments.
Sorry, we're going to allow it just because he's also speaking to how his state of mind.
Thank you, Your Honor. As I was saying, are there any other primary examples that affected your educational life?
Yes. For 3 years, I've been pursuing my passion for social media whilst taking marketing as my major. I absolutely loved it. But after the constant harassment, both at my own home and not being able to pursue the major that I adored while feeling safe at the same time, I had no other choice but to switch into a major that I was not fond of whatsoever.
That's intense. Did Joe ever send you anything?
Yes, they would leave unwanted gifts outside my apartment, which often included coffee, food, balloons, and even once hired a musician to sing for me, which I did not ask for. I felt that they weren't actually gifts, but instead Joe's way of getting me to repay debts that I was unwilling to pay, which was putting pressure on me significantly.
Claim that Joe was doing this in a way to try and force Amaru
It's overruled, counsel. Please refrain your question. Oh, sorry, allowed. Sorry, sustained. My
Okay,
apologies.
okay.
Sustained. Please rephrase your question.
So again, I'm going to ask you, did Joe send you anything?
Yes. Like I said, they would leave many unwanted gifts outside my house, which included coffee, balloons, food, and even once hired a musician to sing for me, which I did not ask for. I felt that that was Joe's way.
How did these unwanted items make you feel?
Well, I was scared, and because of this, I had to close curtains and lock my doors every single night, something that I'd never previously done because of anything.
Your Honor, I'd like to admit evidence of the birthday card. The birthday card to Joe Slip from Margot, right, dated February 2nd.
Witness first.
Is the birthday card you wrote?
Yes.
We'll mark this as Exhibit 2.
Amaru, can you please read what you quoted in your testimony?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Can you please read the quote in your testimony that's highlighted?
I asked Joe to leave me alone so many times I've lost count. I have told him to stop following me, to stop talking to me, and to stop commenting on my social media.
So even after you stated several times you wanted absolutely nothing to do with them, why do you think he continued with the same behavior?
I believe that Joe is trying to mess with my life after everything I've told him, which included him to stop being friends with me, because I cannot think of any other reason that he would continue to do this. I thought that I had provided more than enough clear messages that I wanted nothing to
Counsel,
do
we
with
have an
him.
objection.
I would like to once again pose that as conjecture that Joe is trying to improve the victim's life. I would like that conjecture.
Sorry, am I allowed to ask him to define conjecture for me? No? Okay.
All questions have to be addressed to the court.
Counsel, what's your response to the objection?
My response to his conjecture?
His objection.
Sure. I'll allow it. His objection.
The objection is sustained. Counsel, move on.
Amara, do you recognize this document, the birthday card?
Yes. That's a birthday card I wrote to Joe on February 2nd.
Can you please read what you wrote?
Happy birthday, Joe. I'm sorry I've been so distant recently. I miss you. We should totally get coffee sometime. XOXO Amaru.
Can you tell the court why you wrote this card to Joe?
Well, the several times I've told him to stop before this point were very straightforward and concise, but his responses had only become more and more intense, and he did not stop calling me endlessly through the night, only to be the first face I see when I open my door in the morning, and he was holding unwanted gifts. After being forced to work on the project with Joe, I thought I was finally free of him. I thought if maybe I was polite and changed my attitude towards him, maybe he would finally realize that he was harassing me and leave me alone. But I was wrong.
What happened on May 12th?
That was the day I had a big brand deal and was filming a live video. Joe was already at the filming location even before I had gotten there, and when I started filming, he blasted music and screamed banned words, which he knew wasn't allowed on social media, and ultimately ruined my campaign.
How did his presence impact you?
As a result, I lost the brand deal, which was a huge blow for me financially. That was the final straw, and that was my breaking point. After that, I decided to report him to the police.
Again, I'm going to ask, did you ever tell Joe directly to stop their behavior?
Yes, so many times that I've even lost count myself.
And how did you respond? They respond, sorry?
They kept doing it anyways.
Amaru, finally, why did you come forward to report Joe to the police?
Simply because I felt like I had no other choice. Joe wouldn't stop, and it was affecting my safety, my school, and my social media career. That was my final breaking point.
Thank you. No further questions.
Good morning, Your Honors. My name is Jack Passero, and I am one of the defense lawyers on the council. Amaru, were you and Joe Sillip ever friends?
Yes.
So did you hang out with Joe willingly outside of school?
Yes, but like I mentioned, I told him to stop after a certain point.
And subsequent to you separating yourself from Joe Sillip, did you continue to see him, or was that the last time?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Subsequent to you separating and creating distance from Joe Sillip, was that the last time that you ever saw him?
It was not the last time I ever saw him because he would continuously show up at my door unwanted and walk me to school.
Was it true that you had multiple interactions with Joe on the way to class in a group project, and he would, from time to time, show up in your friend group?
I interacted with Joe in a group project, not because I wanted to, but because I had no choice. The teacher put us in the same group.
Would you say, or is it true that you posted that video to your Instagram of the project?
Sorry, which project are you talking about?
The project that Professor Mika Carmine put you and Joe Sillip in together?
Yes, and honestly, I regret that. And this can be seen by the fact that I have not continued to collaborate with Joe even after the project, even though it could lead to more publicity. And this is because my fear of Joe outweighs the potential publicity I can gain by continuing to collaborate with him.
When Joe would walk you to and from classes, did you ever make it known that you didn't want his presence nor his gifts of coffee and flowers?
Well, I thought that I made it explicitly clear. Let me just refer to my quote from my testimony one more time.
So in my testimony, I explicitly said, I asked Joe to leave me alone so many times I've lost count. I have explicitly told them to stop following me, to stop talking to me, and to stop commenting on my social media. So me telling them to stop following me is a clear sign that I do not want Joe to walk me to school.
In your statement regarding Joe being outside of your house every morning, you also mentioned that you went to a professor about it, stating that Joe kept walking me home from school, always waiting outside my house every morning. It got so annoying that I eventually asked my professor from my marketing class to transfer Joe to the afternoon block. Seeing as you didn't directly confront Joe as per your witness statement, wouldn't you agree that this correlates to a direct miscommunication between the two of you?
I disagree because if you take into account the amount of times I've directly confronted Joe and told him to stop his behavior, he did not listen. So I thought that it would be better for me to approach my professor directly rather than taking an action that I know would have no result.
As you stated in your witness statement, it was very vague that you told Joe to stop his actions. You didn't directly reference that you didn't want him to walk you to and from school in the morning. So couldn't this have led Joe to not knowing that his presence wasn't welcome in the morning?
First of all, I completely disagree with the fact that my message was very vague. Second, like I said, I told him to stop following me, and when he did show up at my house, I don't think I had any other choice but to comply with him, because if you look at my alternatives, the only other alternative I could have taken is to walk around my house and go to the same classes, which would be a complete waste of time. And I did try to prevent this by switching my major so that I wouldn't be taking the same classes as him.
Joe brought you coffee. You stated that you didn't like coffee. Did you tell Joe, don't bring me coffee anymore?
I didn't, but like I mentioned before, I did tell him to stop contacting me, which would include to stop sending gifts.
So once again, Joe had no knowledge that you didn't appreciate his presence nor were okay with his gifts of coffee?
Oh, I think Joe was very aware that I did not appreciate his presence.
Wouldn't you agree that any type of relationship, whether good or bad, requires communication on the problems in the relationship?
I thought that I had made my message very clear.
You also gave Joe a birthday card after the group project, correct?
Correct.
Your Honor, do you mind if I submit that for evidence?
It's marked as Exhibit
Okay.
2.
Yeah, so if you reference Exhibit 2, would you consider this a friendly gesture?
Define friendly gesture.
Would you say that giving Joe a birthday card welcomed him a little more into your life, considering it stated that you wanted to see him and go get coffee with him?
Well, before this point, I had continuously told Joe to stop, which had not worked. So me doing this is part of a, sorry, let me rephrase this. I thought that if I de-escalated and changed my attitude towards Joe, that maybe he would finally realize that how wrong he is and finally stop harassing me. But it was up until this point that I realized that I was the victim and that I was not in the wrong.
Wouldn't that also lead Joe to believe that the relationship was improving from its past problems?
Yes, but even after I sent him the birthday card, I still did not stop telling him to stop or change my attitude towards him in any way.
So would you agree that this birthday card is part of a hot and cold personality that you presented to Joe?
I don't agree.
Why not?
Because I haven't changed my attitude towards Joe even after I sent him the birthday card.
Is the birthday card, in comparison to your other messages and other comments towards him, not polarizing? Do they give the same message off to a person?
Sorry, could you repeat that question?
I said, do the birthday card, in comparison to past messages and other conversations you had with Joe, is it not polarizing? Do they not address two different matters?
I'm gonna repeat this, and I think I know, and Joe also knows that I do not want him in my life. That is all I'm gonna say.
And you don't believe that the birthday card was an inconsistency and invited him back into your life?
That was not my intention, no.
You also later stated that regarding social media, that it damaged your following. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
And would you agree that a public account allows for comments from anyone, positive or negative?
Yes.
And so unless the person is being violent, threatening, or abusive, is the comment illegal to post?
I never said it was illegal.
From your perspective, were Joe's comments intended at defacing your social profile? Like, was he creating lies to deface your presence on social media?
Absolutely.
Were they all lies?
No, some of them were true.
Such as?
Such as one of his comments were saying that I did not like coffee, which was true.
So, same question for you. Do you like coffee?
No.
So, in your witness statement, that's contrary to your witness statement, in which you said, I don't even like coffee.
Sorry, I said I don't like coffee.
And right now, I asked you if you like coffee, and you said yes.
I said no.
Okay, my apologies. It's funny, though, because if you then look at the birthday card and a piece of evidence from your social media post, which is in Exhibit 1, I believe, you posted, "The iced latte with oat milk and hashtag star cups has been my lifesaver," and that is a type of coffee, correct?
Yes.
So does that not prove that you do like coffee, or at least present to your audience that you like coffee?
It was for a brand deal.
And seeing as Joe also follows your social media, would you say that he would get the impression that you like coffee from that?
Sorry, let me repeat. This post was for a brand deal, and it did not have to represent my real likiness of coffee.
How about the birthday card which you sent to him stating that you guys should go get coffee sometime? Does
Sorry.
that also tell him that you don't like coffee?
I think I've made it very clear that the birthday card was my attempt to change my attitude and get Joe to stop. It was in no way an invite of him back into my life.
So did you express that to him? Because if I received a birthday card that invited me to go somewhere with someone, I would believe that our relationship is relatively positive, correct?
Well, if you look at my attitude right after I sent the birthday card to this point, I don't think I've ever changed my attitude towards Joe or agreed to go out with him for coffee.
So would you not agree that this series of mixed comments of your likings of coffee could have misdirected Joe and led to a direct miscommunication between the two of you?
No, I don't think so.
Regarding the May 12th incident at the park, you were there at the park that day on May 12th for a promotional shoot, correct?
Yes.
And was Joe at the park before or after you?
He was there before me.
And did Joe have as much of a right to be there as you did, seeing as it's a public space?
Yes.
You also stated that Joe was playing loud music. Was he aware of the time and date that you would be at the park?
Yes, he was very aware.
Is it true that you were filming in a public spot where Joe often spends time?
Yes.
You also stated that Joe explicitly said words which are banned.
Yes.
Do you have any recollection or proof of those words?
I don't think I've said that in my testimony.
So there is no proof or recollection on your behalf of these comments?
Well, I don't think he would remember the exact words that were screamed, right? But I'm sure that these were words that are inappropriate and banned from social media.
You also said this was the first time that you went to the police to make a report, as this went on for months. As far as you can remember, this is the first time that you made a complaint?
This is not the first time I've made a complaint, but it is the first time I've made a complaint to the police. I think after Joe has started harassing me at my major, I did tell Professor Carmine of my situation, but the response that I got was that they did not care about my personal matters. So if the first person I went to shut me down like that, I wouldn't think to reach out again. But the May 12th incident changed my mind, and that was the final straw that got me to report Joe.
Was the May 12th incident brand deal, the loss of the brand deal, detrimental to your social media success and revenue?
It was. I lost the brand deal because of that.
And would you agree that in order to make money on social media as an influencer, your image has a direct correlation to your wage?
Yes.
Would you say that the presence of an awkward person or someone who doesn't necessarily align with the views on your social media, that could hurt your brand or following?
Yes.
So is it possible that Joe's presence in your life is more of a branding issue than a criminal one?
No, because you can't ignore all of his other actions, which stem from following me to school every day and leaving unwanted gifts and posting the comments on social media.
However, you only went to the police for the first time after this incident on May 12th, which directly impacted your social media following and what you stated as your revenue.
Again, this is not the first time I've sought help from this, and just because I did not report him to the police prior to this does not mean that I did not feel harassed by his behavior.
That's all, Your Honor.
like to call Ngozi Madu to the stand. If you don't mind, could you please state your name and age to the court?
My name is Ngozi Madu, and I'm 21 years old.
How do you know Amaru Orr?
We've been roommates since first year university at Mariposa.
Did you witness any interactions between Joe Sillip and Amaru?
Yes, Joe kept showing up at our place and following Amaru around campus.
And what kind of things would Joe do?
Joe would wait outside our house in the mornings, try to walk Amaru to class, and deliver things to our doorstep, such as coffee, balloons, food, even a guitar player once.
Did that affect your life at home at all?
It got really uncomfortable. We started closing all the curtains, locking all the doors and windows, and I began to constantly feel anxious.
And did Joe try to contact Amaru in other ways?
Yes, Joe called constantly. The phone would vibrate through the walls at night. Amaru couldn't leave the ringtone on because it would ring nonstop.
And did Amaru ever respond to those calls or ask Joe to stop?
Amaru never answered, and they definitely told Joe to leave them alone countless times.
Were you with Amaru on May 12th during their brand deal filming?
Yes, I helped most of Amaru's content. That was supposed to be a big campaign day.
And did Joe know about this brand deal in advance?
Yes, Joe not only knew that we frequently recorded here, but knew about this exact deal. He knew when and where it was happening.
And what happened that day?
Joe was already at the filming location. Instead of leaving us alone, they started blasting music, yelling inappropriate words that are not permitted on social media. We couldn't film anything.
And what was the result of that disruption?
Amaru lost the brand deal, and it was a huge blow financially.
From everything you witnessed, how do you think Joe made Amaru feel?
Scared. They felt trapped. Joe didn't stop, no matter how many times they were asked to.
Your Honor, no further questions.
Can I object? This objection to hearsay. He stated that on behalf of Amaru that she felt threatened and she was scared.
That was a direct interaction between the two of them. That was not through a third-party source.
The objection is overruled. Also, it's late, counsel.
Hello, everybody. My name is Emmett Rood, and I am one of the defense attorneys for the case of R.V. Sillip on the side of the defending Joe Sillip. Firstly, I would like to submit some more evidence. While I do not have a physical copy, it is in relation to the social media posts and the comments that Joe has made. I would like to submit all three of these. Firstly, the one about the copy, then the one about this exercise equipment, and finally, this one here about the sunglasses. I would like to submit all three.
Please show the witness. Please show the witness.
I would like to submit this. First, get familiar size of both of this. You already know these?
Yeah.
This one,
Yep.
All right.
Counsel, you should direct your questions so that the judges can hear when you're directing it to the witness.
Oh, well, I was asking you familiar with
Yes, you have to direct those questions on the record.
My apologies. Ngozi Madu, would you say you are familiar with these three social media posts?
Yes.
These posts that the defendant, Joe Sillip, has commented on.
Yes.
Do you believe that the comments that Joe Sillip has made on Amaru's posts have negatively impacted their brand and caused them to lose out on things like followers and money?
Objection calls for speculation.
Objection sustained. Next question, counsel.
Very well. I would like to ask you this. So, if I look in your witness statement, you specifically mentioned that Amaru began to lose out on income because of Joe.
Correct.
So would you suggest that Amaru's social media account began to decline because of Joe?
Can you repeat the question?
Would you?
Counsel, that objection is sustained. It's sustained. Proceed with change your question or ask another question, counsel.
Okay, fine. I was simply trying to prove something about Joe Silip. It's, even though, but so. All right. So
Why don't you try rephrasing the question, counsel?
Well,
Try.
yeah, but I already tried that.
Take a
Forget it.
moment.
I'll go to something else. When Joe Silip switched to the marketing major, do you feel like this was a desire to get closer and intentionally harass and follow Amaru, or do you think he had a genuine passion for the course? What do you think?
I felt like it was harassment.
You feel like Joe Silip? Would you say that Joe Silip did that because of the intention to harass Amaru?
Yes, because he was told numerous times to not contact her.
Well, I would like to refer to Exhibit 1, which includes the transfer requests, in which we can very clearly see that Joe Silip has completed 3 credits in the required marketing course, showing that the defendant does indeed have an interest in marketing, and said transfer was most likely not out of the blue. And I would also like to refer to Amaru's witness statement, in which they say that what they told Joe was to get new friends, not to avoid them and cut off all contact with them. So therefore, Joe transferring over to the marketing course was not against Amaru's wishes, because Amaru had not said that they never wanted to see Joe.
Counsel, do you have a question?
Well, yes, I am saying, do you think that Joe was transferred, did Joe transfer to the marketing department to harass Amaru?
As I said previously, yes.
And yes. So what do you think about the evidence that Joe had already prior interest in marketing, and the fact that Amaru had never explicitly told Joe not to contact them, and that so therefore Joe transferred to the marketing department do you believe that was Joe transferred to the marketing department not a part of their wishes? Was not a part
Can
of
you
Amaru's
repeat the question, please? Or
Amaru
rephrase it, please?
specifically told Joe to get new friends. That was their exact wording. In what way would transferring to the marketing department of their own volition be Joe violating Amaru's wishes?
Well,
Objection overruled.
Amaru told Joe numerous times, as I stated before, that he didn't want any contact with her.
According to Amaru's sworn witness statement, the exact phrasing of the word, and remember, this is the very first incident, this is before any of the other situations, this is the gifts, the brand deals, this is just when Joe transferred over to the marketing department. The word was to find new friends. That's the exact quote. It's about a month after I told Joe to find new friends, and they decided that they should stop spending time together. In no way do you think that the action, just say to find new friends, is a request to never see each other again and to avoid them at all costs, such as having to cut out on classes because they are also there? Would you say that?
Well, Amaru didn't only just tell him to find new friends. He also told her to leave him alone.
Well, according to Amaru's witness statement, that was the first thing they said, that they should just stop spending time together in general. And just because they're in the same class together, would you agree that just because being in the same class together doesn't mean you have to spend time together, that you are beholden by law to spend time together? Would you say that?
Well, you're in the same room, so you are spending time together.
Well, yeah, but you're not directly, would you say that you were directly interacting with them in such a way that would make you feel uncomfortable? Do you believe that then Joe Silip should have been banned from the marketing department simply because Amaru didn't want him there?
Well, the way Amaru felt about Joe, you could tell that she didn't want to be in his presence.
So you think that Joe Silip should have been denied access to the marketing department simply because one of the other classmates didn't like him?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. Next question. You reported that you saw Joe's car across the street from your house. Is that correct?
Correct.
Do you have the license plates of the car?
No.
Therefore, can you prove that it was Joe's car with an absolute certainty beyond a reasonable doubt?
No.
And you never saw Joe in the car, correct?
No, it was always empty. But you could tell by the way Amaru felt, just his presence, his car being there,
She
Well,
was
the way
uncomfortable.
Amaru, regardless of the way Amaru felt, you can admit that there was no definitive effort by Joe. Do you admit that there was no definitive effort by Joe? Do you think that there was a definitive effort by Joe to stalk Amaru using their car?
Well, when someone tells you to leave them alone, I don't think you want their car outside your house.
Well, it's a public space. Does Joe not have the right to park their car there if so he chooses?
Well,
And
the road is a public space, but you could see the car from the house, and that's a private space.
And once again, you still have not proven that it was actually Joe's car. Can you once again present any proof that you are absolutely certain that that was Joe's car?
No.
And next question, please. So in your witness statement, you mentioned how Amaru started to begin locking the doors and windows, which they had never done before. Can you prove that it was Joe who was behind the reasoning to do that?
Well, he would always be outside the house. He would wait outside the house in the mornings to walk her to school. So that's essentially what we had to do, take safety precautions.
But Joe never made any concerted efforts to actually break into your house?
No.
So would you not agree that these safety precautions seem a bit unnecessary?
Well, when someone is unwanted at your house, you would feel unsafe.
So I want to know more about your personal interactions with Joe. Did you ever tell Joe that you did not want that Amaru did not want their gifts and their calls?
Me personally, no, but I always felt that Joe was weird. I never had anything in common with him.
I'd like to ask you more about the calls. So you would agree that Joe Sillop was calling the plaintiff at basically all hours of the night, tying up their phone line and causing general disruption, correct?
Correct.
I would like to ask you a question. Are you aware of a function on the most common modern iPhones known as the block feature?
Yes.
Could you please give perhaps a reasoning why Amaru, if they were so terrified of Joe and wanted to be away with Joe so desperately, would not use said feature on Joe's number? It seems like an easy fix.
I do not have a reasoning for that, but they went to school together during the day, so why would Joe want to call constantly about overnight when they could have discussed during the day?
Well, if Amaru didn't want these calls, there was a very clear solution to how to stop them, and you're using them as evidence that Joe was harassing Amaru. It seems like Amaru didn't take every precaution. If she truly wanted to avoid Joe at all costs, like you claim, then why did they not block the number?
I'm not sure.
So, I would like to ask you a question about Joe and their appearances in the public spaces. So, Joe appeared during, you say that it was not just on May 12th, but Joe appeared during several occasions in your filming spaces, correct?
Correct.
Were all of these in public spaces? Nothing was like in your own personal house where Joe was there?
Correct.
Therefore, would you say that Joe has a right to be there because it's a public space?
Yes, but no, yes.
Therefore, would you argue that Joe being there was not, so therefore, can you prove that Joe being there was an intention to harass and purposely disrupt the filming, and he wasn't just there because Joe wanted to be there personally?
Well, Joe knew that we were frequently at that place.
Well, yes, but it's a popular spot on campus. It's a big park. Could they have not been there just because they wanted to?
Well, he told them to leave him. Amaru told him to leave them alone. So.
Well, yes, but Joe. It wasn't as though Joe purposely came up and started disrupting the filming. Joe was nearby playing music, correct?
Correct. Inappropriate music.
Well, does Joe not have the right to play music whenever they want? Is said music banned from the park?
No, he has the right.
Since you are filming in a public space, is it not true that every single person in the park has to stop everything they're doing so that you can film your videos?
Repeat the question.
Since the park is a public space that you are actively choosing to film, would you would you say that every single person in the park has to immediately stop any noise that they're doing or anything they're making and bend to your video making process? Or do they not have the public right to be there and do as they wish because it is a public space?
No.
So you don't think that they have the right to do whatever they want in a public space, regarding it's legal?
Repeat that?
So just to reiterate, you do not think that people should have the right to do what they want in a public space if it would disrupt your filming?
No, I do think people have the right to do
Okay,
whatever
I just
they
wanted
want.
to confirm. I would also like to confirm another question you asked. You said earlier in this testimony that Joe should have been barred from transferring to the marketing department because of Amaru's disdain for him and the fact that they were also in there. Do you continue to support this stance?
Yes.
So you think an entire department should be set off to one student because one student personally didn't like them? And remember, this was before any claims of criminal harassment. This was just when Amaru first told Joe that they didn't really want to be their friend anymore. This was before the gifts, before the May 12th incident, this was before everything. So you think just because one student no longer wanted to be friends with another, they should have been banned from basically whatever they wanted to do on campus, and what should be banned from the marketing department?
Well, although Amaru didn't file a complaint, she did tell Joe that she didn't want to be around him, and any respectable person would respect that.
But the exact wording is that they didn't want to be friends anymore. You could be in the same class and still not be friends, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so I would just like to confirm that you still think that just because Amaru told Joe to find new friends, Joe should not have been allowed to the marketing class.
Repeat the question.
So you continue to support the stance that just because Joe and Amaru had a falling out, that Joe should not have been allowed to the same class as Amaru.
Well, as Amaru's friend, the way Amaru felt, I know she felt scared, and she felt very unwelcomed, so she didn't want Joe's presence.
Well, if we recall the witness testimony and the overall timeline of events, we can recall that Joe's transfer to the marketing class was before Amaru began locking windows and doors, and before, as you claim, Amaru began to feel unsafe around Joe. So, therefore, your reasoning, so would you not agree that Joe has the right to transfer in the class if all that happened between them was just they weren't friends anymore?
No, as her friend, no.
So where do you think it should end? Should Joe be banned from the entire University of Mariposa just in case they might bump into each other? Because that seems to be happening a lot.
Maybe.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Your Honor, would you mind if I submit a piece of evidence on behalf of, it's the same part as the digital evidence they gave you, I just have a physical copy if you guys are open to that?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. As previously stated, my name is Jack Bracero, and it is my pleasure to be the active representative of Joe Sillip on today's case. The defendant appears before the court today falsely accused of criminal harassment. Following the culmination of the case, we, the defense, ask for a ruling of not guilty. The responsibility falls on the Crown to prove that the actions of Joe Sillip were contrary to Section 264. Ladies and gentlemen of the court, today you will hear the story of two once close friends who were split apart, not by anger, hatred, or malice, however by a lack of communication and a series of misunderstandings in combination with high emotions. When looked at closer through the evidence, you will see a student who was passionate about a friendship for which they cared deeply, taken abruptly by many mixed messages and a hot and cold personality presented to them as they tried to hold on to a connection that they thought was mutual. Joe Sillip followed the rules and acted in a respectful manner, perhaps awkwardly at times, as he grasped at the few straws left in the relationship. Joe Sillip was never hostile, violent, threatening, nor sly and secretive, which could provoke Amaru Ori to fear them. Joe attempted to show kindness through leaving gifts at Amaru's door, as well as walking and talking with her in the morning as the two bonded over a coffee. Mika Carmine, professor of both Amaru and Joe, will tell you that Joe Sillip was well engaged and passionate about the Marketing 201 course, which they taught. They quickly became a student of fine caliber. His actions of passion and enjoyment about the class didn't halt when split from Amaru, however, continued at all times. That doesn't sound like the actions of a harasser. However, a student following a passion while trying to build a completely platonic relationship with a friend inside and outside of class. The court already heard from Ngozi Madwe, roommate and close friend of witness Amaru Ore, who paints Joe in the worst possible light. Ngozi plays the role of mother hen in Amaru's relationship, standing by her side at all times. However, even Madwe admits that a formal report was only made after a brand deal of Amaru's fell through. This deal benefited both Ngozi and Amaru, showing that they prioritized the financial benefit of themselves and social benefit of themselves rather than safety and comfort. That is substantial. The case and prosecution of Joe Silip isn't about criminal harassment. However, it regards the blurred boundary between friends and foe, created through Amaru Ore's mixed emotions, hot and cold personality, along with the mixed messages sent the way of Joe Silip. We ask the court to listen and view all evidence from an open-minded stance in order to establish that Joe Silip's actions are not criminal behavior. Thank you.
The defense would like to call Joe Silip to the stand. Please state your name for the record.
My name is Joe Silip. I'm 22 years old, and I'm a student at U of M for marketing.
Please state your major, past and prior, and present.
I was originally in computer science, and then I switched to marketing.
How did you first meet the plaintiff, Amaru Ore?
I met Amaru in my first year at school in May of 2023, and I thought, honestly, we were really good friends. That was until a comment was left on one of her social media posts saying that I shouldn't be on screen. This really hurt me. As I went to Amaru to ask them about it, they told me that I'm basically a random person and I'm just trying to ride their coattails to fame. Terrible.
Truly sad. So, next question. About a month later, you switched into the marketing major. However, you continue to reiterate that this was not out of desire to get close or stalk Amaru, as the prosecution claims. You claim that this is for your own volition. And as we see, we have the evidence, Exhibit 1, showing your prior business transcripts and credits to back that up into your marketing major. So, do you affirm the statement that you transferred on your own volition?
Yeah, of course. I switched because I realized computer science really wasn't for me. I really was passionate about marketing, as shown in the evidence where I did complete 3 credits prior to this. Even in the class, I showed great participation and excelled in the class. And it was really just a personal choice to follow what I cared about.
Okay, so as you know, I'm sorry, I'm a bit, can I get a tissue, please? Of course. My most sincere apologies. So, as you know, you and Amaru have gone through 3 sort of platonic breakups in a way.
Correct.
When you were friends during each of these 3 terms, did Amaru ever give any indication that they were unhappy with your friendship or wanted to break it off prior to the moment when they actually said it?
Well, when we started being friends, she told me I should find other friends. And at first, honestly, I took it as a compliment. I thought she was telling me I had such a great personality that I should go out and expand my friendships. Until she told me it again. And I realized that I might not have been interpreting it correctly. So I decided to leave her alone for a month. That was until I joined the marketing, and I did see her every day in my classes. I decided that maybe best, since it was on my route, maybe we walk together and try to rekindle our relationship.
Is that the end of your statement? Okay, so when you were giving Amaru gifts and bringing her coffee every day, did Amaru ever express the desire that they did not want said gifts? Did they always accept them, and did they ever give any indication that they did not want said gifts?
I brought gifts and coffee as a kind gesture. And since they never refused them, I mostly went along with it. I assumed it was okay. I just wanted to be a thoughtful friend, really.
So let's skip forward ahead to the project that you were paired on together by Professor Micah Carmine, who is one of our witnesses. And so following the success of the video that you posted in this, and that Amaru actually posted to their own page. Shortly after that, the friendship was broken up with again. Do you feel like would you say that Amaru was using you for views in a way by posting the video with you in it and then subsequently asking you for no further contact?
Yeah, it definitely felt that way. I thought we worked really well together. I mean, we had a really successful project, and it went viral on her account. But once it was over, they shut me out again. It felt like they only valued me when it helped boost their image.
So I would like to once again make reference to the exhibit in which Amaru makes a sponsored post from the Star Cups Corporation in which they proclaim their love for oat milk latte coffee. And so, Joe, after your formal breakup, you began to post certain comments on it in which you made reference to, among other things, referring to Amaru as a sellout or a corporate shill. So would you say that, given Amaru expressing in their own witness statement that they do not like coffee, but posting an advertisement for coffee, pretending that they do like it, would you say that your comments were truthful and they weren't intended to hurt Amaru, but instead...
Sustained.
Rephrase
What were
your
the
question.
intentions behind your comments once you made them?
My comments were honest and came from a place of trying to inform other people. I knew who Amaru truly was, and I didn't like how she portrayed herself on social media, lying to her viewers for more clicks and more money from big brands. I decided it was my responsibility as someone who was once close to Amaru to reach out and help other people not fall for the same things that I did.
So, after Amaru sort of broke up with you for the third time, and during the time when you were no longer really together, but still posting the comments, Amaru reported that you bumped into them all the time. So, was this on purpose, or was it an accident because of the campus and circumstances?
No, majority of our time spent together after the fact were coincidental. I mean, U of M is a very small campus. It's a very close-knit, tight campus, and we were all also in the same major. So I felt a lot of the times we ran into each other was coincidental, but I didn't hold back from still being nice to them.
Do you feel like, would you say that Amaru genuinely wanted to be friends with you with situations like the project, or do you think that you were just being used for views?
In the moment, I did think that we were good friends, but now, after having time to reflect, I do feel very used.
So would you say that the comments that you made on Amaru's social media negatively affected their brand and caused them to lose out on money or funding?
Well, I can't really speak on the effects of my comments, but I knew that what I was saying was truthful and honest.
Yes, well, I would like to speak on the effects of comments. If you will refer to the evidence which I showed you previously in my testimony of Ngozi, I can bring it up again.
Which exhibit?
You can.
It's one of the exhibits that's not printed out. Oh, wait,
Okay.
no.
Oh, I think we have some
Yeah,
now.
we have it, yeah.
Yes, if you take a look.
You could just take them. We have our own copies.
If you take a look at the posts following Joe Sitlep and on Amaru's social media page, let's take a look at this one from February 15th, 2024. So this was the first incident in which Joe posted said comments onto Amaru's social
Counselor,
media.
do you want to put the document to the witness?
Oh, yes, of course.
Thank you.
Do you say that these are comments that you made on Amaru's social media?
Yeah, that's me, Joe Slip 123.
Okay, and so so in regards, if we actually look at the numbers that are happening on Amaru's social media, you can see that with the very first post, Amaru got roughly 1,000 likes. However, several months later, and after you making months of those comments, her next post got nearly 4,000 likes. Therefore, would you not agree that your comments were not negatively harming Amaru and their brand in any way?
Yeah, for sure. I just was speaking the truth, and I guess the public reacted how they wanted to react.
So you admit, so you would say that your comments did not cause negative financial harm to Amaru?
Sustained. Counsel, I would ask that you not lead the witness.
Sorry. Well, that's no further questions.
Okay.
Your Honor, my name is Declan Castaldo. I'll be representing the Crown, and I'm going to be cross-examining Joe Sillop. Your Honor, just for clarification, the transfer records and social media comments have been admitted into evidence already, correct?
Yes.
Joe, you used to be a computer science major, right?
Correct.
You switched into marketing shortly after Amaru told you to stop spending time with them?
Correct.
You switched into marketing because you love it, correct?
Correct.
That's interesting, because in your testimony, it says nothing about loving or being interested in marketing. In fact, it says you deliberately switched majors to show Amaru how good of a friend you wanted to be. Is that correct?
I believe you're twisting my words, but
Word for word what you said.
Yes?
Objection, I would like to say that's a leading question.
I'm allowed to leave.
He's allowed to lead. It's
Cross-examination.
That's all right.
Continue, counsel.
sorry, state the question again.
You switched into marketing because you love it, correct?
Correct.
Well, I find that interesting. It says nothing about in your testimony loving or being interested in marketing. In fact, it says you deliberately switched majors to show Amaru how good of a friend you wanted to be. That is word for word from your testimony. Showed Amaru how good of a friend you could be.
Is there a question, counsel?
Is that correct?
Is there an objection?
That is,
I have a different objection to make. It does not say that in our defendant's sworn testimony. The wording is a bit complicated, but it said, I wanted to show Amaru how good of a friend I could be. I switched into the marketing department, so we started to see each other every day. Those are the exact words, and it does not ever deliberately admit to switching just to see Amaru.
Counsel, it's cross-examination. He's allowed to put the question to the witness, and the witness can answer, indicating whether he agrees or not.
Does your testimony state anything about switching into marketing for interest in the subject?
no, it does not, but it was a passion of mine, and you could see that from my 3 previous credits I took in marketing before transferring.
But Amaru had already told you they didn't want to spend time with you, correct?
Well, my decision for my future isn't really
That's
based.
not my question. Did you switch to marketing after Amaru had told you they didn't want to spend time with you?
Yes,
You began walking them to and from campus every day,
I did.
even after they said that they didn't want to see you.
Yeah, that is correct.
And they told you clearly to stop contacting them?
I wouldn't say it was very clear. I feel like Amaru gave me a lot of hot and cold messages, and it was very hard to read what they were trying
For
to say.
example, you claim hot and cold. Is that because of the birthday card?
The birthday card, as well as how well we collaborated on the project, as well as her posting the project to her social media.
Yet after all those instances, did Amaru continue to tell you to stop contacting them and stop reaching out?
After all those, after the fact,
Yes.
yes, she did, and I stopped.
But you kept showing up to her place of residence? You waited outside their home in the mornings?
I feel like you're mixing up the timelines because there were 3 different instances, and I did stop in between each. But after the project, I thought that we were getting back to being friends again, and she did not tell me to leave her alone. So I did come up to her house with gifts and things of that nature. Just trying to be a good friend.
So you left coffee and gifts at their door, correct?
Correct, as any good friend would, right?
Yet Amaru continued to tell you that she did not want to see you.
But she never rejected my gifts.
She never deliberately accepted them.
Yes, she did. She walked with me and sipped her coffee, happily.
You called Amaru repeatedly, including late at night, correct?
As a good friend does. I wanted to check up on them.
You knew they weren't answering, but you kept calling?
I don't know. It's the type of person I am. I just wanted to make sure that they're okay.
You commented negatively on their social media posts, correct?
After the fact, correct?
You knew Amaru was a professional influencer. Posting negative comments hurt their business, correct?
It wasn't directly to hurt their business. I just wanted to express my feelings towards them, and I wanted other people to understand the type of person they are. If that negatively affected their image, I couldn't do anything about that.
Is it safe to say that after Amaru tried to end the friendship, your feelings were hurt?
I think anyone's feelings would be hurt, but I didn't use that to deliberately attack them. I kind of went on in my own way. I did my own thing.
Yet, when you collaborated with Amaru and you guys were quote-unquote friends, you had no issue with her social media content. You didn't feel the need to comment on her post then. It was only after she told you that she didn't want to be your friend anymore that you
Well,
began.
I think that was before I truly knew the type of person Amaru was. That was early in our friendship, and it was before I really had an understanding of the type of person and the type of content that they posted. After I understood the fact, then I had enough information to inform their viewers of the type of person that they were.
Your Honor, permission to approach the witness?
Yes, permission granted.
Yeah, correct. Which one is that? Sorry, just so I could have it. With the sunglasses, right? Yeah, I got it.
I'm going to read out some of your comments and ask you some questions.
Sure.
Some of us like to enjoy the park without hearing your voice all the time. Does that help Amaru's business?
I don't think it helps Amaru's business, but
Does it hurt Amaru's business?
I can't say whether it would hurt or help Amaru's business.
Companies will just give brand deals to anyone these days, it seems. Does that help Amaru's business?
Again, I don't know how my comments would affect Amaru's business or not. I'm just trying to put my voice out there.
Yet you only felt the need to make these comments after Amaru told you she didn't want to be friends with you, correct?
After I got to know her, correct.
You knew Amaru had a big live brand shoot planned for May 12th, correct?
I do not recall.
It says in your testimony that you knew that there was...
I may have had word of it.
You showed up to that shoot location?
Can you please specify the shoot location?
Park?
So the public park that all the students go to? Yes, I was there at the park.
But you brought speakers and blasted music during the filming, correct?
I wanted to hear the new album. It's a public park. I feel like I could do as I wish.
You yelled words that could get someone banned from social media?
I was singing my song, and if it was captured on her live, then I really had no control over that.
Are you familiar with subjective standard?
Please describe it.
For your and the court's knowledge, subjective standard considers a person's individual circumstances, beliefs, and mental state when assessing their actions or knowledge. Do you understand that?
Okay, sure.
To make it clear for the courtroom, do you have any pre-existing medical conditions that affect your cognitive abilities?
I do not.
So when all of this was happening, no medical implications had any impacts on your decision making?
No.
Are you familiar with objective standard?
Please describe it.
So for your and the court's knowledge, objective standard refers to a way of assessing conduct or knowledge based on how a reasonable person in the same situation would behave or know. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, that makes sense.
Joe, do you believe your actions were harmless?
Sorry, say that again?
Do you believe your actions were harmless?
I do.
You believe showing up at someone's house every morning without being invited was normal?
It was a friendly thing to do.
Do you think it's normal to wait outside someone's door every day at the crack of dawn, pushing unwanted items at them when they have asked you to stop? Do you think that's normal, Joe?
When they accept it and follow along, yes, I do.
So just because Amar was on her way to school, you view that as willingly going with you?
When they accept,
What's her other option, Joe?
when they accept the gifts and follow along with me, then yes, I do. If Amaru was to tell me at the time during those mornings that she would like me to stop, then I respect her wishes.
But she continued to say that she did not want to be your friend and she did not want to see you throughout this whole process.
That was prior.
This continued out throughout the whole process.
She would say that, to my information, she would that to her friends, and professors, but she wouldn't say that directly to my face during those mornings.
When someone doesn't answer your calls over and over and over again, do you think the reasonable thing to do is keep calling, keep harassing?
I feel like in the context that you're saying it, maybe not, but in the grand scheme of things, when we were friends and we're working on assignments together, I do believe it is crucial to communicate with your friends, yes.
Joe, do you think people should be allowed to choose who their friends are?
I do believe people should be allowed to choose who their friends are.
Reasonable people understand boundaries, right?
Correct.
Reasonable people stop when they are told to, right?
As I did.
Joe, does no mean no to you?
No does mean no to me.
So even the witness agrees, no means no. Yet Amaru told Joe numerous times, and you continue to harass them.
Say that again.
So you agree that no means no, yet Amaru told you no numerous times and you continue to harass them.
Amaru did tell me no numerous times, but they also wrote me notes, also collaborated properly with me and successfully. So I felt that her no's also kind of meant yes.
You believed Amaru was your friend, but a reasonable person told repeatedly to stop would have respected that boundary. You didn't, correct?
Sorry, say that again?
You believed Amaru was your friend, but a reasonable person told repeatedly to stop would have respected that boundary, and you didn't, correct?
As I did. I left her alone for a month, and then when we got back into the marketing class, then we collaborated on a project. We worked well together, and she sent me a very lovely note saying that she wants to they want to hang out with me again.
Yet after that note, did she continue to tell you that she did not want to be your friend? Did she bring that up again?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Yes, she did. Your Honor, I have no further questions anyway.
I would now like to call Mika Carmine to the stand. Can you please state your name and professional occupation?
My name is Mika Carmine, and I'm a marketing professor at University of Mariposa
And how long have you been a marketing professor at the University of Mariposa?
for about 10 years.
When did Joe join your class in Marketing 201?
I believe October of 2023, after switching majors from computer science.
And how was Joe's participation in your class?
Things started off a little bit rocky, but over the year, they showed tremendous improvement.
Did you ever see Joe during office hours?
Yeah, frequently. Came regularly and worked very hard to improve. Our interactions were always professional and positive.
Did Amaru Ore ever approach you regarding a switch of program for Joe?
Yes, Amaru requested that Joe would be moved to the afternoon cohort.
And what were her reasons for doing so?
They mentioned a personal issue and expressed discomfort working with Joe.
Why did this fall through ultimately?
Well, the afternoon cohort was full, first of all, and without clear evidence of classroom disruption or harassment, I couldn't justify a schedule change.
Later on, towards the end of January, you paired Amaru and Joe on a project together. What were your reasons for doing so?
Well, I hoped it would smooth tensions. Both are bright students, and I thought collaboration between the two might help.
From your perspective, how were the interactions between the two throughout the course of the project?
From what I saw, they worked really well together. The project was creative, and Amaru even publicly shared it.
Did you ever have any complaints brought up to you about the project, or was it smooth sailing for most of the way?
None, nope.
And after the project, was there a change in attitude for either Joe or Amaru?
Well, Joe became even more invested in the class, even after not observing any inappropriate behavior whatsoever.
And overall, how would you describe Joe as a student and as a person through your interactions?
A very dedicated, passionate student who worked very hard to improve and contribute to the class.
That's all, Your Honor.
Please state your full name for the court.
Mika Carmine.
Mika, how long have you been a professor for?
10 years at Mariposa.
Decades, a long time. Would you say you're a good teacher, an experienced teacher?
I would say so, yes.
You would say you have a lot of experience dealing with student drama, wouldn't you?
Absolutely.
So you would have a pretty easy time coming to know these students, correct?
Yep. As I said, I worked with Joe numerous times.
All right, perfect. So would you say Joe's an average or even below average student?
At first, I would have said that, but I think now they are above
Currently,
average.
would you say he's a below average student?
Nope.
So would you say he's intelligent?
I would.
Would you say Joe doesn't pay attention in class, that his awareness is below average?
I would not say that.
You would say he's aware then?
I would not say that.
You just stated that he was aware, actually.
Guess so, yeah.
Sorry?
So yes then, to the second question.
Yeah, so you would say he's aware.
I'm sorry, aware of what? Repeat that?
I asked you if that his awareness is below average, and you said no. I'm just corroborating what you said.
His awareness is not below average.
Thank you. Would you say that Joe was a responsible student, getting his work done? He was a responsible student.
Correct.
You'd agree he's dedicated and persistent in getting his work done.
I'm sorry, repeat that?
You'd agree that he's a dedicated and persistent student.
Correct.
How'd you come to know Joe so well again?
He frequently stopped by in office hours and worked very hard with me.
Okay, perfect. So a smart teacher who has been a professor for over a decade, who is experienced in dealing with student affairs, agreed that Joe is responsible, persistent, aware, and an intelligent student. Earlier, you just stated all those things, correct?
I mean, I would think someone who comes in to look for extra help
Sorry, I'm
would
just asking if you
describe all
stated
those
all those
things.
things, correct?
Correct.
Earlier, you mentioned that Amaro approached you directly to be separated from Joe, to be moved to another block. Were you surprised at this request?
Yeah, I was surprised. Yeah.
And you said you told Joe about this request, correct?
I did.
So Joe knew Amaro wanted space.
Yes, Joe was devastated at first.
So wouldn't you expect a responsible, aware, and smart student like Joe to respect that boundary?
I would say so.
Thank you. Instead, after this conversation, you say Joe became more engaged, more intense, asking deep philosophical questions about marketing and online identity, correct?
That's correct.
So Joe didn't really distance himself after that. They became more fixated.
Well, I mean, they were in the same class. And I also put them in a project together, so I don't see how they wouldn't be able to.
Let's talk about the group project then. You said they worked well together.
From what I saw, correct.
Were you aware that shortly after this project, Amaro left the marketing program entirely?
Yes.
But you never connected Joe's behavior with Amaro's departure.
Like I said, they worked very well together, and they had no problems together while completing it in the classroom.
But surely, as an experienced professor, you understand that not all harassment happens in the classroom.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so let's be clear. Top student, aware, perceptive, persistent, told clearly by their peer, both directly and through you, that their presence is not wanted, and you agreed that a reasonable person, you agreed that a reasonable person would respect that boundary.
That's correct.
Yep,
but
and their presence was not wanted. You told them that. Instead of taking space, they doubled down. Wouldn't a truly responsible student recognize that as a red flag?
Like I said, there was no way for Joe to be moved at that time.
You said in Amara's testimony, she stated that, sorry, was that the only reason that you couldn't move her?
Well, yeah, and yeah.
Did you even have any, did you care at all about what Amara had to say to you about her personal problems?
Of course I did. I care about all my students.
That's interesting. In Amara's testimony, she said, they don't care about my personal problems, end quote. You said that to her, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you for your time. No further questions.
We will recess for judge's deliberation. All rise, please. Okay, this court is now in recess. Oh, my sincere apologies. The defense first, please.
The case of R.V. Sillop is very complex and multi-layered, and basically, the story of our defendant, Joe Sillop, is one of miscommunication and a friend who once acted friendly to him when they wanted, and turned on him when they felt otherwise. When Joe was first encountered Amaru, they cut off the friendship just because somebody told Joe that they didn't belong on Joe's social media. When they became friends again in class later, Joe continued to bring Amaru gifts such as coffee that were never refused. Therefore, Joe had no indication that my apologies. Therefore, Joe had no proper indication that Amaru did not want said gifts. And even though Amaru did tell Joe sometimes that they needed to find other friends, however, they would also go back on said statements by doing things such as sending Joe a birthday card, which I will make reference to as one of the exhibits, that explicitly expresses the desire to get together and hang out once more. These mixed messages and confusing different statements could have led Joe to a miscommunication with Amaru, and such things are common, especially at the turbulent and development time of his life that Joe Sillip is in. The actions that Joe Sillip took were not direct harassments, and even though there were certain claims, such as their car being parked outside of Amaru's house, Joe never made any real attempt to break in, and all of his attempts to wait there in front of the door was because he believed that Amaru wanted him to wait there and receive his gift because she never turned him down. When Joe sent the messages on social media, it was because they knew that Amaru wasn't letting up on everything in their social media. And their comments reflected the fact that Amaru, for example, taking a brand deal where they said they'd like coffee, but in reality they don't actually like coffee. And sure, maybe some of these comments got a little bit personal and a little bit mean-spirited, but once again, everybody has the freedom of speech to say what they want, even if it's not necessarily the nicest thing to hear. And when Joe bumped into Amaru, such as on the campus or in the hallways of the school, even though these are public places, and Joe Sillip has every right to be there. And them bumping into Amaru is not signs of harassment. After all, they go to the same school, they, until recently, took the same courses. It's not completely beyond the realm of possibility that they would bump into each other by happenstance. So, in conclusion, Joe Sillip is a lot of things. Maybe they can be a little awkward when it comes to their friends, maybe they don't always read social cues exactly, and maybe they don't know exactly where things end and stop. But one thing is certain, Joe Sillip is not a criminal. Thank you.
Your Honors, thank you for your careful attention throughout this trial. Today, I ask you not only to weigh the evidence, but to feel the weight of it. Because at the heart of this case isn't just a question of law. It's a question of dignity, safety, respect, and boundaries. We're not here because of one misunderstanding. We're not here because of one accidental encounter. We're here because Joe Sillip, an intelligent, aware, and persistent individual, was told no. And instead of hearing that no, they chose to push forward again and again and again. Joe Sillip was not confused. Joe was not unaware. In fact, you heard from Professor Carmine, a respected educator, who told us Joe's among their top students, intellectually sharp, capable of understanding complex social dynamics. And yet, when Amaru Ore, a young student with a future, a business, and a life of their own, asked for space, Joe didn't step back. Joe followed. Joe waited outside her home. Joe called relentlessly. Joe left gifts that were not asked for, unwanted. Joe showed up again and again at Amaru's favorite filming spots. And when Amaru changes majors to escape it, Joe doesn't stop. When Amaru's career starts to unravel, Joe doesn't stop. They posted comments that damaged a brand Amaru worked hard to build. They disrupted a campaign that meant income, stability, reputation, credibility. And Your Honors, these aren't the actions of someone who's unaware. These are the actions of someone who's unwilling to respect boundaries. So let me ask you this with all due respect. If you were in Amaru's shoes, how would you feel? Trapped? Violated? Your Honors, you're educated, emotionally aware individuals, just like Joe. Ask yourselves, would you do what Joe did? Would you behave the way Joe did after being asked to stop several times? Because the law doesn't require physical violence to define criminal harassment. It requires a pattern of behavior that causes someone to reasonably fear for their safety. And that's what we have here today. Amaru tried to ignore it, tried to keep the peace, tried to stay polite. But fear doesn't always come with a dramatic moment. Sometimes it creeps in. Until you're closing the blinds, maybe even changing your major, maybe even losing income. This is not a case of awkwardness. This is not a case of miscommunication. This is a case of criminal harassment. Joe Silla made choices over and over to ignore Amaru's boundaries, and now the consequences of those choices have come to this courtroom. Your Honor, we ask you to return a verdict of guilty. Thank you.
Now the judges will recess for deliberation. All rise. This court is now in recess. Thank you.
You may be seated.
I did a better job, but okay. Yeah, I could do. I tried. Sorry.
Yes, we were going to, we're all in agreement.
It's up to you.
How are you on time? I don't. Would you?
Yes. All rise. Court is now reconvened. Thank you. You may be seated.
On the basis of the evidence, the court finds that the elements of section 264 sub 1 have been met, and the accused is convicted. Guard? No, I'm just joking.
We're going to schedule sentencing. So, should I begin with the comments?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I'm going to try to be quick and short. First off, like we said with the other group, all of you should be commended because to do this is not easy. And we on our side, we appreciate what it takes to actually prepare a case and present a case to a judge. And even after decades of doing this, you still get the butterflies and the nervous energy. And so to do this at your age, all of you need to just give yourselves a pat on the back because public speaking is never easy. So wonderful job, all of you, really and truly. A couple of points. So let me start with Declan, right? Okay, because they had your names reversed here. When you were cross-examining Will, I wrote to Batista, beautiful dance. And that's what an effective cross-examination is. It's like a beautiful dance. Will handled your questions really, really well. You handled the information that was coming out very, very well. And I loved the strategy that you had. You kept your questions really short. You were building the case, which is exactly the way you need to do it. And so really effective cross-examination. And so job well done. The thing that, and I think it was a few of you, I don't want to point out, but one of the things you cannot do in court is the commentary. So the wow, or the wow, that's amazing, or wow, like that would never happen in court, because the judge would immediately stop you. And it's just not proper. So I think there were a couple of you on both sides that did that. You have to make sure you don't do that. There should be no reaction at all. You should try to eliminate the word so when you're cross-examining or examining, to start off with so or that. Those types of things that we use in common language, you have to try to avoid them. Also, Emmett, so you, in cross-examination, you got to keep your questions very short. They've got to be short, punches to the point, and you build. And this is something that both sides had a little bit of handling, difficulty handling, leading questions. So for the defense, there were a lot of leading questions in chief that would certainly not be allowed. And I was kind of looking over here going, oh dear God, stand up and object, because there were so many objections that you didn't do. Now, to your credit, that's great, because you did give your colleagues an opportunity to present their case, and because once there's an objection, it really ruins your flow, right? On the objection, I think there was one instance where you objected, Emmett, and I think and I had turned to you. So just as a point of reference, when a judge turns to you, because we weren't doing this throughout, but if a judge turns to you and says, counsel, what do you have to say about that? The judge is inviting you to provide your position on the objection. So you're not the determining person. You're not the judge to say, I'll allow it or whatever. You can withdraw the question. That's allowed. But for you to say, well, I'll allow it, or what I was looking to you, and you probably got it afterwards, was, I'm looking to you to say, hey, fight back a little. Tell me why you think it's proper, right? So, but still, it's not that you didn't object. Both sides did some great objections, and that was wonderful to see, and I'm glad that you didn't interrupt each other's flow too much. Having said that, you really have to be careful with leading questions, because when you do in chief, you have to very delicately guide your witness down the path of presenting the evidence. And on the word evidence, you typically never use the word evidence. So you would not say there's no evidence or what. You tend to steer away from that. You want to present the case. You don't want to ask the witness to make a determination as to whether or not they are meeting the burden of proof. That's when you have to just avoid all of that. And also you have to avoid introducing a question by indicating that you're going to be asking the question. When you do cross-examination, you control the flow. It has to be short, you have to build, and you are best to not present the witness with a roadmap as to where you're going. Keep it very short, start off with a really easy question that you think that person will agree to, and just keep building. There was also one instance, I think, where the witness was allowed to refer to their statement in chief. That would not be allowed. The witness is supposed to provide what we say viva voce evidence, which is live testimony. They're supposed to do it based on their recollection, on their memory, their knowledge. They're not supposed to have a piece of paper where they then turn and say, let me read this, because that's not the point. Sure.
Court might. The judge.
Yeah,
the judge
there are a lot of things that I don't know how my colleagues feel, but we also didn't want to interrupt your flow. But many times, if you were in a live courtroom, some of the things that did occur, depending on the judge, you may find yourself with a judge who would take a proactive approach and say, counsel, what are you doing? Or counsel, stop. Or counsel, that's leading. Counsel, rephrase the question. So it's not necessarily that the other side has to object. Sometimes if you have a judge who is very involved in the case, they will control the flow, because you also have to appreciate that they want to hear the evidence in a very clean fashion. They want it presented to them. And if you're going to lead a witness and that witness agrees in chief, it's not really helpful evidence, because you've presented the answer to the witness, and the judge is going to say, how much weight can I give that when you've handed the answer to the witness? So things like that. But I think overall it's the same comments for everyone. Cross-examination is a tough thing. Keep it short, to the point, and build. And appreciating you don't have the time in this kind of forum to do that. amazing job. It was fun to watch, really entertaining.
Very, very good. Just to add to that, again, very good, everyone. Sometimes I noticed you were making submissions within your questions. So some things are submissions and some things are questions. So that's what Sonia's talking about when she's saying you're trying to create your argument within the question, but the answer to the question lends support to your argument. So when I started doing this a long time ago, my principal, my articling principal said, you don't ask, one of the conclusions is in law, let's say in family, this isn't family, but one of the conclusions is, do you live separate and apart, right? To decide if a family is separated. You don't ask the question, did you live separate and apart? The question is, would you eat dinner together? How many times did you eat dinner together? Do you sleep in the same room? So in this case, you kind of rallied it at the end, but this case is, it's not, do you think you were harassing her? The question is, would you repeatedly show up at her house? Did you, how many times did you call her a night? I know you don't have that evidence, but those are like the building blocks to then sum up your submissions when you're doing your closing. So do those arguments, the argument and the submissions are for your closing, and this is just for questions of fact, that's it. And then, sorry.
And know when to stop.
And know when,
That's
and
the
know
other
when
is
to stop.
Effective cross-examination, you have to know when not to ask that last question that will blow it for you.
Right.
And sometimes that last question is why, and don't ask it, because you're inviting the witness to provide an explanation now for all of the foundation that you've built that supports your case. Sorry,
Right.
Batista.
No, not at all. No, the other thing too is I think there were several instructions for the judges to keep an open mind. I wouldn't instruct the judge to say that because I would be offended. To say, well, of course, this is my job. So just don't tell the judge what their job is. They won't necessarily like that.
That's a jury
address.
address.
That's a jury address. Yes, it's not wrong. It's not wrong.
Of a jury address.
Right.
Where
I just would be cautious of it.
Yeah, great job. There's a few things. Both Crown Counsel, you both spoke very clearly, asked very great leading questions on cross, and I did feel the build-up and like reiterating and summarizing the evidence. That's really good, and it was really effective, even with a difficult witness. So good job on that. The defense also similar. Good job, like listening to the witnesses. I felt like you weren't just. Both of you weren't like just looking at your notes, and that goes for all of you. Like you weren't just looking at your notes, like you're actually engaging with the witness, and that's really effective. And that I could see that, and it was good. All the witnesses, you did a good job. Will, like very good demeanor on as being Joe. You're pretty calm and spoke clearly and had some good explanations for some difficult facts. So. That was good, entertaining to watch, but yeah, good job, everyone, really good.
Thank you, you guys. Great job.
On both.
Oh, okay. Did you?
Yeah. Okay. You good? Oh.
Team.
No. Yeah, I think the teacher's going to pick the team.
Yeah, I think they do.
Do we?
Said we're gonna do it.
Did you need us to make the announcement? I'm sorry, I didn't understand. Okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to do it, Gina? Go ahead.
No, you do it.
Okay. Oh, okay. Well, I guess. Yes.
So the top oralist,
Wish we
this originally donated a good 22 years ago by Justice J.B. Shaughnessy, Mr. Shaughnessy's father. So this is known as the Thomas More Legal Advocate Award, awarded annually to a student who demonstrates good oral advocacy in the legal field. And the winner of the 22nd Justice J.B. Shaughnessy mock trial is Declan Castaldo.
Oh. Yeah, sure, come on up.
Yeah, great.
Does you want us beside them, or?
Chance?